Hello and welcome. My name is Zaffar Iqbal, and you are watching the Mojo Story. The all important meeting between President Trump and President Xi has happened, and Trump has called that meeting 12 out of 10. That's the rating that he has given. Now, this has come amid new US China trade moves. Now, a day after President Trump really praised Prime Minister Modi and said that Prime Minister Modi uh, is a killer. That's what the words that he used, and is a great person. Trump is now meeting with the Chinese president, and Trump is basically again saying that he has a good equation with the Chinese premier, and they are out to do a deal that is a pet word of President Trump. In all the conversations, he eventually comes to this point of making a deal with his with other leaders, world leaders. That's what he's been saying. To discuss more on this, we're today joined by an eminent panel. If I may introduce my guests, we're joined by Lt Gen Raj Shukla and also Ambassador Veena Sikri. Welcome to Mojo Story. Both our guests, welcome. If I may start with you, Lt Gen Shukla, what is the sense that you get of uh, uh, Trump Xi meeting, and Trump really calling it 12 out of 10?
Weird as Trump himself, 12 out of 10. But having said that, I think, I've been following the reports through the day, both the American and the Chinese side. While the Chinese have been restrained in their remarks, if you look at the issues, I think it's not a bad deal. Uh,
Right.
my understanding is that the tariffs have been lowered by 10% for the assurance that the Chinese have given
Yeah.
that they will do all that they can to stop the flow of fentanyl. So that's
Yeah.
one. The other issue is very clear that the rare earths roadblock seems to have been resolved for the moment, 1 year agreement. And that is also the time I'm told the Americans need to get going with the processing of their own rare earths. So it is, this quid pro quo on fentanyl and rare earths. The other thing is the Chinese assurance that they'll buy soya, some other farm products, energy from Alaska. So those are the other three significant, shall we say, payoffs. There is no final deal on TikTok, I note. The issue of ownership transfer to an American company, control of the algorithm with BYD. I didn't hear anything from either at least the Chinese readout or Trump's press gaggle on Air Force One on that. On the high-end chips, which was the other sticking point, what I've heard is that there has been some forward movement, and basically Trump has said that they will speak to Jensen Huang, NVIDIA, who's been actually making this case that the Americans must sell chips to China so that the overall tech stack as far as chips is concerned, is American and not Chinese.
Right.
So I think it is not a bad deal. Things seem to have moved forward. Two more points I'll add. Now, if you see in the manner in which Trump and MAGA have negotiated deals, it is a lot of tough posturing, quid pro quo, and ultimately getting a deal. So I think the Indian deal will also follow some similar path. And you already had some, shall we say, good omen by President Trump describing our prime minister as somebody with killer looks and all that. That seems to be an edifice for
Right.
a good deal to follow. And the larger point I would like to throw up, and I'd be delighted to hear what Ambassador Sikri says. It seems to me that Trump's foreign policy is finally working.
Right.
I mean, he's claiming that about $10 trillion of investments have come. Maybe an exaggeration, but definitely $4 to $5 trillion. Domestically, There has been no major pushback. Even the courts now seem to be giving in to Trump's policies. So I think he has pulled it off, despite all uh, the, uh, the the doubts we had. And I don't think any country he has a major problem. Even the Brazilians, I was surprised. The first meeting he had was with the Brazilian president. So, despite all the tough posturing, he does talk, he does give and take, do some give and take. So, overall, I think the Trump foreign policy is working. I don't know what Ambassador Sikri thinks.
Right. We'll hear what Ambassador Sikri has to say, but let's first hear what Trump had to say after meeting with the Chinese leader.
But overall, I guess on the scale of from 0 to 10, with 10 being the best, I would say the meeting was a 12. Okay, I think it was a 12. I think very importantly, just the whole relationship is very, very important. And I think it was really good.
Especially coming on the heels of the successful trip. We're in Malaysia. You signed a peace deal for Cambodia and Thailand. Critical mineral deals with all our allies.
So many successful meetings. Right. And so many meetings great for our country with literally hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars have come into our country over the last 4 days, represented by this meeting. But trillions of dollars, where Toyota is going to build plants, $10 billion worth of plants. And, I could go over so many different companies coming in. They're pouring money into the United States.
Right. Ambassador Veena Sikri, whenever one hears Trump, it's all about money, it's all about deals. He's saying that so many countries are pouring in money. There are trillions of dollars that have come to America. It is very predictable. All his discussions, all his talks are about deal, about finding ways of investment in America. Do you think he has succeeded with his mission with the Chinese leader?
Well, I think it's far too early to say. Absolutely too early to say, because even this most significant meeting between President Trump and President Xi Jinping, the readout from the two sides are entirely different. President Trump has jumped into it immediately saying it's a 12 out of 10. But from President Xi Jinping's side, it is a very restrained readout, and there is no deal signed. Everything is up for negotiation. It's all in the future. And they have not signed on a single piece of paper. Critical issues have not been taken up. TikTok, for example, as mentioned by General Shukla, which was expected to be, which was specified as an item which would be decided at the leadership level. The fact that they have not mentioned it on either side means nothing has been decided. And of course, what China has said about supplying rare earths to USA is only temporary. It's for 1 year. So I can see that maybe for 1 year, if China is going to send rare earths to USA, so USA will give some concessions to China for 1 year. For example, on the entity list, America had included certain further additions on the entity list. Subsidiaries of companies who were already on that list, if they were 50% owned, they were not going to be able to deal with exports. And this had been a big problem for China. So they have raised this question with the USA, but there is no firm indication from USA whether this is an acceptance of this or not. So the key issues are all up in the air. That's one very important point. And I would say that judging from the, let us say the indication, the personality interaction during the meeting, I think President Xi Jinping came off better. But for example, at the beginning of the meeting, when they first met, I don't know why it came out like that, but normally in protocol terms, either they should have both walked into the room together, and then come in front of the flags and shaken hands, or they should have come in together from opposite ends of the podium. But somehow President Trump was asked to come there first, and he was waiting for a few seconds, looking very embarrassed and shuffling around. And then President Xi Jinping came on to the stage, and they shook hands for a few minutes. Now, here at departure, exactly what you're showing on your screen, at departure time, the same thing happened. It seemed as though President Trump was seeing off President Xi Jinping. He was seeing him to his car, and then he left for something else. So these little indications in these high-level meetings are very significant of the perceived positions and perceptions of each leader's position in the bilateral equation. And President Xi Jinping at this moment certainly seems to have come out on top. President Trump has been attaching the highest importance to this meeting, and he has been clearly talking about what is called a G2. In fact, you will be surprised to know that he tweeted just on the very eve, in a few moments before the meeting was to start, he tweeted, "The G2 is about to convene." So clearly, in his mind, this was a G2 meeting. But from President Xi Jinping's side, there was no responsiveness on the G2 issue at all. So this, again, is another mismatch between the expectations from the American side and the response from the Chinese side. We do know this whole concept of the G2, that America and China between them will decide the positions of the rest of the world, something proposed by American economists long back, really depending on economic issues. And many in the Democratic Party had taken it up, like former President Obama had been a great supporter of the G2. China had at that time proposed it to America, and the Democrats had supported it a lot. But President Trump in his first term certainly had no support for the G2, and he kept talking about China as a strong rival, as a competitor, as somebody who almost had to be contained, as it were, and the role of India in kind of the whole situation around China. But this time around, it is President Trump who is talking more and more about the G2, and he certainly visualized this meeting as a culmination of the G2, or almost as a coming into existence of the G2. And as I said, the tweet that he gave on the eve, seconds before the meeting, was very surprising. One assumed at that time that maybe China has accepted and there's going to be a document to say what it is all about. But that was not the response at all. So again, whether the expectations from the American side were higher than what President Xi Jinping was prepared to deliver at this time, whether President Xi Jinping still has a lot of cards in his hand that he is going to use over time. Even the reduction of the tariffs, this is only on fentanyl. And it is very surprising, why should tariffs be reduced on fentanyl? Because fentanyl and fentanyl precursors are something which is harming the American economy immensely through its impact on the individuals, including youth and others who are falling prey to this addiction. And it's a very, very harmful drug. And the imposition of tariffs on fentanyl precursors was meant to actually not only hurt China, but also to make it more difficult for people in America to get it. So why, out of all the items, the fentanyl tariffs have been reduced is a little mystifying. It's been brought down to 10% just for that one item. So the overall, from 57%, the overall percentage of tariffs on Chinese goods still remains 47%. Which is high. So again, on tariff reduction, there hasn't been the answer that China would have expected. So I would say that a lot of negotiations are still ahead, because if the negotiation had been completed, a document would have been signed by now, and we would have had something, at least a document, a statement, a joint statement, an indication of intent. Nothing. There's nothing on that, except that President Xi Jinping said, yes, we are big countries, there are bound to be differences, etc. He didn't give any hope of any differences being resolved. So I think that one has to wait and watch very carefully where this is going to turn out. It may still be that some items are under negotiation. There is a lot of issue on technology. Yes, there is a talk that Jensen Huang of NVIDIA is going to negotiate with China on supply of some of the chips. But again, this is going to be part of the deal. So what is the deal going to be wholly? Whether it is going to really come out as a G2 and so on, or whether it is going to remain as it is for some more time. Maybe it'll happen in April, because now President Trump has said he's going to go to China in April. Maybe that's going to be the time when the deal will be announced. Obviously, it's being pushed down the road, clearly. For the next 4 or 5 months, you're not going to have anything except negotiations. And maybe when President Trump goes there, something will be announced, and maybe that will be good for President Xi Jinping, to show that President Trump has come there. And so I would say that everything is open. A lot of things, most things are open. A lot of things are not discussed, including TikTok, including many technology issues. On the entity list, there's no response from America yet on transshipment. And so there are many issues still which are there. And I would like to say also on the question of what President Trump is saying about trillions coming into America. Yes, the tariffs have produced a large amount of money for America. And since his farmers are in a very bad way, he's already promised a large amount of that money to his farmers who have been suffering by lack of purchases of soybeans from China and so on. China has now announced purchases of soybean, but I presume it will be part of the deal. So it won't happen immediately. It will be part of the deal. So maybe it will happen by April or something like that. So there are many, many issues. And even in Japan, even in South Korea, there has been a pushback. Now, for example, Prime Minister of Japan, the First Lady Prime Minister of Japan, she was very warm and welcoming to President Trump. But we do know that on some issues, she has pushed back. For example, she has said that on LNG, she is not going to cut down her purchases, Japan's purchases of LNG from Russia. She said, we have cut down on purchases of oil. On LNG, we depend on Russia for as much as 10% of our LNG imports, and we are not going to be able to cut it down. Now, here comes the question. On China, the largest purchases of petroleum and petroleum products from Russia. No mention of tariffs on China for that.
Yeah. It is very interesting that there is no joint statement. General Shukla, the fact is that it's okay. President Trump said that 12 out of 10. But the proof of the pudding, as they say, is in eating. We don't know exactly which way the talks have been. If you can see the body language, she seemed to be more positive. He seemed to be more in control. Trump seemed to be a bit tense. But I mean, all of this, India is closely watching the developments that are taking place. These are fast-paced developments that are happening. And today there was a press conference by the MEA. It is specifically asked to the MEA spokesperson about the Russian oil. And he again put out the Indian point of view. Let's hear that before we can go further.
We are studying the implications of these sanctions. As we have said this before also, our decisions that we take naturally take into account the evolving dynamics that is there in the market, global market. Our position on the larger question of energy sourcing is well known to you. In this endeavor, we are guided by the imperative to secure affordable energy from diverse sources for meeting the energy security requirements and needs of 1.4 billion people.
Right. General Shukla, do you think that India is slow in its responses? There is no change as such in the basic fundamental stand of India that we will take oil wherefrom we'll get it we get a better deal. But again, there's nothing to offer to Trump that Trump can go about and say that, see, I have been able to do there's some success as far as India is concerned. Don't you think that the world is moving at a very sharp, very fast pace? And this Trump, on one hand, he's praising Prime Minister Modi, he's calling him a killer, a great guy. On the other hand, he's put so much of a tariff on India. There is a mismatch. I think the team that is negotiating with the US, do you think they are on the right track, or some change need to take place to suit the way that Trump is dealing with the world leaders?
So, before I come to that, while the deal may not have been signed, on the 4 or 5 issues of nitty-gritty, both sides have said the same thing. Let's take fentanyl. The Americans had put 20% tariffs when the Chinese were sticky about fentanyl. Now that President Xi has given some assurances, usko 20 se 10 kar diya, aur rare earths le diye. Soya bean is an assurance which the Chinese have admitted to. Farm products, energy from Alaska, chips negotiations. So why I'm saying it may be a reasonable success, because both sides on the nitty-gritty have said the same thing. That is one point I would like to make. However, while the weather may have improved, the long-term climate will certainly not change. And
Right.
in that, as Ambassador Sikri pointed out, not only TikTok, Taiwan didn't come up even for discussion.
Right.
And the acid test of G2 will be Taiwan, which is a very difficult thing. And I don't see on Taiwan either side making any concessions. And here now it's this point about the climate. Here I've really been following this very carefully with interest, because I think it's a real interesting relationship. In the long Cold War between America and the Dragon Bear, I don't think there is any fundamental change. Look at these choke points like rare earths, high-end chips. Those issues will remain. In fact, there the challenges are getting pretty, shall I say, they're getting acute. How? It appears to me that both the sides, they are heading towards different technological orders. Open AI is all about closed source. DeepSeek is all about open source. In fact, the Americans are reiterating, or the Trump administration is reiterating what Biden said. That bit about small yard, high fences. मतलब जो असली technologies हैं वो किसी के साथ share नहीं कर रहे हैं. और China is saying small yard, big world. They are saying we'll share technology with Africa and others, and they are doing it. So I think we are actually heading, or in this Cold War 2.0, technology is the frontier issue of, shall I say, conflict. And within that, we are heading for very difficult times. May I also make this observation? What Trump and MAGA know, and obviously they will not say it publicly, that in this fourth industrial revolution, which is all about AI, robotics, so on and so forth, China has got an unassailable lead. In the first industrial revolution steam, it was UK. 2 and 3, which was electricity and motor cars and all that, it was Edison and Ford, distinctly American. For the first time in an industrial revolution, the Chinese have got an unassailable lead. And here I don't think the Americans have many cards. So I think for this reason, Trump is very respectful of the Chinese, not only praising Xi, but saying that they are a very powerful country. And the key question is this, and I do not have a definite idea, but the key question is this. Overall, are the Americans pivoting out of the Western Pacific into their own spheres, or pivoting in? Now, it could be either. In the Quantico gathering of the generals, which took place a couple of weeks back, day one was about signing loyalty questionnaires to Trump. I'm told day two was all about the American pivot to Indo-Pacific. They identified key areas where they have to, strengthen themselves against the Chinese. People say Trump is all about tariffs. He has bought warship production under the White House. He has announced a 175% increase for funding for long-range precision. He is the president who has upgraded their space and cyber commands to combatant command status. He is doing a lot to strengthen the military. It could be that this pullback to the Western hemisphere is a brief pullback. He'll repair the military and come right back. Now, if that is the long-term game, then Trump is not as big a fool as we think. He's not merely transactional. It's not merely tariffs. And I have this strong hunch that that is the game. Because in the short term, he knows that in all these choke points, he has lost it. And the ability of the Chinese to scale up at the leading edge of technologies is unique. And here, in many of the areas like steel, cement, shipbuilding, car production, EVs, batteries, warship production, they are miles ahead of the United States. And that will take a lot of time and effort on the part of the Americans to draw level. And I've heard Trump on another show talking of going after this manufacture of missiles and all full steam. He's been talking of robotics to go after these missiles. So I think, in conclusion, how Trump is handling the Chinese is in a very practical manner, perhaps for a brief while retreat to the Western Hemisphere, repair the military and come back. So as far as the climate is concerned, while this Cold War is initially about technology and industrial capacities, it will boil down to a military to military, shall I say, contest sometime in the future. Right. So these are very early days. I think, as Ambassador Sikri says, the long-term climate, I don't see any change. And so the last point I'll make about the Indian situation is just this. See, if we are taking time, it may be that we are just negotiating hard. We should do. But our problem is that we do not have the same strategic choke points, the same capacities as the Americans. Usko to bada samay lagega banane mein. And therefore, I get back to my constant argument, what we need to do for the next 10 years, put our head down, capacities.
Absolutely. I think, but the way that you put it up, it's, you summed it up in a good way that, in this technological revolution, there is a fight between China and America, and China is miles ahead. But their model is different than the American model. Their model is different than it is a clash at a different level. It's a clash that's happening at a different level. Yes.
Can I very briefly come in here?
Yeah.
See, now that the Americans have woken up, it is my view that they will recover and recover fast. There have been many such, challenges in the past. Japan, Germany, the Americans have always won. But this time the Chinese competition is very tough. Yet I say my personal hunch is once the Americans wake up, it is very difficult to beat them. So China has the edge, but if the Americans have woken up, they are pretty innovative. They've got talent, all that big tech stuff and all that. It is, it's not
a matter of time. It is a matter of time. But Ambassador Veena Sikri, I wanted to ask you specifically about India. How is India playing these cards? These are developments that are taking place almost on a daily basis. How has India played its cards so far? As General Saab says, the negotiation must be on, it must be negotiating hard. But do you think we are on the track as far as dealing with Trump is concerned?
I think that Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal himself said a few days ago that we do not negotiate with a gun to the head. So we are carrying on our negotiations based on our own principles, our own red line, which we have said that we will preserve the interests of the farmers, the dairy farmers, and so many other, where you uniquely said. So we are keeping on with that track, but we are observing the situation very carefully. And when you observe the situation, you come to the conclusion that yes, okay, maybe President Trump, he's trying to move on two tracks at the same time. But certainly I agree that President Trump will try to build up his technologies and catch up with China. Certainly all is there. But at the same time, what is puzzling is that he can't decide whether he wants a G2 with China or whether he wants to work with the rest of the world with China as the main strategic rival. Now, even with his own neighbors, with Canada, with Mexico, with others, he has serious problems. They are not on board with him. I mean, just now, because an ad came out in Canada, he's put another 10% tariff on them. So these problems are creating a lot of uncertainties for Trump with his neighbors, which is difficult. Now, when you come to his recent visits to Japan and South Korea, both of them are very key partners of the USA, and America has troops. They have bases, they have troops stationed there, both in Japan and in South Korea. So one would suppose that the purpose of those troops being stationed there is, of course, protection of Japan, but also protection of American interests and watching what China is doing. How do you reconcile this with Trump telling the world in a tweet, the G2 is coming? How do you reconcile these two? Now, the one thing is that, say, nowhere in this visit did President Trump talk about Quad, about a free and open Indo-Pacific. He didn't mention these. It was not there in his press conferences, nowhere. Now, we all assumed that, yes, he didn't mention it because he was going to meet President Xi Jinping. And these are issues on which President Xi Jinping is very sensitive. So in the interest of getting his G2 together, he was not mentioning these things. Now, okay, that's one point of view. But we do know from Japan's own statement that actually he discussed all these things. He even discussed Quad with Prime Minister Sane Takeichi. He discussed it, and she has given her own statement saying that we have discussed these issues, including Quad, including the Japan, South Korea, America, all these issues, and about a free and open Indo-Pacific. Now, when Prime Minister Takeshi is herself putting out the statement, obviously this has happened. So he is talking to President Xi Jinping about a G2, but talking to Japan and perhaps even South Korea about a free and open Indo-Pacific. It creates a kind of a two-track level of discussion and decision making. We do not yet know which track is going to prevail. And this is where countries like Japan, particularly, everybody is uncertain. Now, we do know that the Prime Minister of Japan telephoned our Prime Minister yesterday. And she did that with a very, very special gesture. The moment that President Trump left Japan and moved on to South Korea, Prime Minister of Japan telephoned our Prime Minister. They had a 25-minute discussion. And it was definitely a telephone call focused on saying that all the issues which Prime Minister Modi had agreed upon, with former Prime Minister Shigeru before the new Prime Minister was appointed, all those are going to be continued. All the defense coordination, the defense cooperation, the technology cooperation, the economic all those are going to continue for the global strategic and comprehensive partnership between Japan and India. So these are all indications of another kind, that President Trump has discussed these issues. These issues are being discussed with India. So, this is, we have to take on board all these things, and we have to quite correctly go ahead with our Atmanirbharta, our move towards Viksit Bharat 1947. Touchwood, so far it is going very well. We've achieved 7.8% rate of growth, and I'm sure that's going to continue. IMF and World Bank themselves are talking about more than 6% rate of growth for next year. So I think that it's going well, but there are these issues that, as you said, the trade deal that we are going to work out. I think the 25% extra tariff certainly should go now, because there is absolutely no rationale for keeping that 25% special tariff, especially when neither Japan nor China nor anybody else has got it. So, okay, that goes. Now, when you come to the rest of the tariffs, those I think certainly are being negotiated. And I do think that our exporters are okay with minus that special 25% for export of oil, for import of oil from Russia. Other than that, it's fine. So we do expect that we will have a good trade deal with America, perhaps by the end of November, as was the original time frame. But of course, we do know also that right now there's a government shutdown, and so there's not many people whom you can talk to, and there are those problems. Maybe there's going to be a trade team coming to India very soon. All these uncertainties are there, but basically, if the trade deal comes through, I think, and we do know that all the other activities between India and USA are continuing full steam. There's been no slowing down on any of the other activities and programs of cooperation, whether it is critical and emerging technologies and so on. So it's fine. I think we are doing all right on that. But of course, we are keeping a very sharp eye on all these, different movements and so on. And we do know, even with Japan and with South, there's no written deal. There's no written deal with any of these governments.
Right.
So it is all up air, and I don't think it's going to be written down until the China-US deal is finalized. That seems to be President Trump's priority. Once he gets that done, everything else he will try to fit in place. But I agree that strategically, he's not going to sit back and stop on it. He's ordered the testing of nuclear weapons again. And so he's not going to sit back and wait for the strategic rivalry with China for that in any way to allow the American position to weaken on that. No, certainly not. He will go full steam ahead on that. And so is India going full steam ahead on that. That's fine. But the situation remains very opaque.
Right. General Shukla, last word to you. When we talk of Trump and his obsession with tariffs, we cannot miss also his obsession about wars and resolving conflicts. He has spoken so many times about India-Pakistan war, that he used trade as a lever to stop the war. That may not be true. But yesterday he said that he in fact spoke to Prime Minister Modi at that time. India has clearly said that there was no such telephonic talk between the two. But he said that. Trump can say anything. But I was just thinking that at least Trump should get the credit for resolving or trying to take steps to resolve the issue in Gaza and other wars where he has actively taken part. These are two things, because he has always been saying that he's not getting the Nobel Peace Prize for all the efforts that he's making. Trade aside, what about his role in resolving the international conflicts? Because in the end, the two are related one way or the other.
So see, here is where Trump gets complicated.
Yeah.
He stops 8 wars, but he doesn't hesitate to go ahead with the B-2 strikes on Iran.
Yeah.
He doesn't hesitate to target those boats off Venezuela.
Yeah.
So he doesn't hesitate to use force. Now the moot point is this. Once he repairs and rebuilds his military, the fact that Xi is committed to unite Taiwan either peacefully or coercion or blockades or by force. So when push comes to shove over Taiwan, what will Trump do? What will America under Trump do? Will it let it go or will it contest it? Now that's a very difficult choice. If it lets it go, in my view, it is the Suez moment for America. Because if it lets Taiwan go, what conclusions do Japan and South Korea draw? That will be the precipitous decline for USA, just as it happened for UK. So I'm saying that Trump has a lot of distractions, Nobel Peace Prize, trade, tariffs, but on those other issues, he's made the Department of Defense war. He's calling for the military to get lethal. He's doing a whole lot of stuff which previous American presidents didn't do. So is, Trump doing classic deception? And if not Trump, the larger MAGA camp? Very surprisingly, Elbridge Colby, who's all quiet now, his Undersecretary of Policy for Defense, was an outright pivot to Indo-Pacific man. He's quiet. Is he silently plotting the American return to the Indo-Pacific? I mean, that's the real moot question. The second point I'd like to comment is, Ambassador Sikri made this observation about the current Japanese Prime Minister, where she's a protege and a favorite of Shinzo Abe. And if she's a favorite of Shinzo Abe was very gung-ho about the Quad in terms of strategic military capacities and not vaccines.
Right.
Now, if it is strategic military capacities, China gets balanced. If it is vaccines, China will not get bothered. So we have to make up our mind what Quad is all about. It has to go beyond maritime domain awareness and all that. Otherwise, a serious player like China doesn't get deterred. That's the point about Quad. The point I'd like to make about trade is, I observed that the Chinese have signed some kind of deal with ASEAN on trade, which is close to $1 trillion, bigger than EU and America. So is India missing this great opportunity to our east by staying out of RCEP and all that? I mean, I understand the need to protect domestic industry, but at some point we'll have to engage with the world. Otherwise, we will never develop those long-term capacities, which will give us real economic and strategic heft. So I think the current deal, of course, we'll negotiate it well, but that is really not the point. The point is to develop these longer-term capacities in economics and technology in strategic military terms, because that is what this Vikasit Bharat dream is all about.
Right. Ambassador Veena Sikri, you want to quickly come in before we wrap?
Yeah, thank you. No, I just want to say very briefly that even on this whole issue of, as you said, that what he said about speaking to Prime Minister, when we know that conversation didn't take place, India is being very mature about it. Our response is very restrained. We've said it once, it's known to the world, and we're not going to say it again and again. But the very fact that President Trump is saying this again and again, actually his own credibility in other parts of the world is going down. Now, let me say again about Japan. The Japanese Prime Minister has said that she will nominate President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize, but she specified 2 instances that she's going to mention. One is about the Thailand, Cambodia, and the other is about Hamas and Israel. She didn't mention any of the other 6 or 7 or 8 issues that President Trump keeps talking about, and certainly she had no mention of India, Pakistan at all. So I think this is a sign of what it is, and we are going to maintain our sobriety and very careful observation of the situation. I think Quad, for example, whether Quad or no Quad, our agreement with Japan is very significant on maritime security in the Pacific. in the Indo-Pacific. Our agreement with Australia is very significant on maritime because we are going ahead with that, Quad or no Quad. We do hope that the Quad summit in India will take place next year, and we do hope that now that this this meeting is out of the way, maybe President Trump will say, I'll come after April. Maybe that's what he'll say now. But let's see what happens on that. But we are taking it very seriously and soberly. So I don't think we should underestimate our serious awareness of the situation. We are negotiating the trade deals. We've done it with the UK. Hopefully with the EU it will come out. With UAE we have a good deal. We're going ahead with that. With ASEAN we had an agreement, but it hasn't been working. So we are asking for a renegotiation. Our Prime Minister spoke about it. We are hoping to do that also. So it's not that we are not at all cutting ourselves off from the world, but we are realizing that bilateral or the small-scale trade agreements suit us much better than these huge ones like, APEC and all that. So that is what we are doing.
Right. Interesting times, the times of Trump, President Trump that we are living in, very unpredictable times, very scary times, very exciting times, but these are nevertheless different times, the way that he's conducting diplomacy, and we never know what's going to happen tomorrow. On one hand, he praises Prime Minister Modi, and in the same breath, he praises Asim Munir and calls him a great fighter. We really don't know what's going to say tomorrow, but that is the world that we are living in. He's the President of America, and we cannot ignore him. Thank you so much, Lt Gen Raj Shukla, for joining us today, and Ambassador Veena Sikri for sharing your thoughts, and thanks to our viewers for watching the Mojo Story. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.